At 18, my stepmother sold me with a smile. If someone had told me those words a year earlier, would have laughed and said life wasn't some dramatic movie. I would have said things like that only happened in stories people made up online. But on the night of my 18th birthday, standing under the warm glow of expensive chandeliers in our dining room, I learned that real life could feel colder than any story ever written. I had spent the entire afternoon helping decorate the house because Vanessa insisted we host a small family dinner. She said 18 was important. She said becoming an adult only happened once. For a moment, I actually believed her. The dining room looked beautiful. White roses sat in crystal vases across the table. Soft jazz played through hidden speakers. Vanilla candles flickered beside polished silverware. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Looking back now, I think part of me already knew something wasn't right. My father, Marcus, had been away for business for almost 2 weeks. That wasn't unusual. His work often took him across different states. But he had called me every birthday since I was 6 years old. Every single one. This year, nothing. No call. No text. Nothing. I remember staring at my phone 3 times during dinner, pretending I was checking the time. Vanessa sat across from me wearing a dark green dress and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Beside her sat Olivia, my stepsister, scrolling through her phone between bites of salad. Olivia and I were the same age. We even attended the same school for years. But Vanessa always made it clear that we weren't the same. Olivia was the daughter she wanted. I was simply the reminder of the woman my father loved before her. Make a wish, Evelyn, Vanessa said as she set my birthday cake down in front of me. 18 candles danced in front of my eyes. I stared at them for a few seconds. I wished for something stupid. Something small. I wished my dad would walk through the front door and surprise me. I blew out the candles. Vanessa smiled. Olivia smiled too, although hers looked nervous. Strange. Olivia never looked nervous. Not around me. Dinner ended an hour later. Plates disappeared into the kitchen. The music stopped. The house became quiet. Too quiet. Vanessa walked toward me holding a small envelope between her fingers. Happy birthday, sweetheart, she said. Sweetheart. She hadn't called me that in years. I looked down at the envelope. My name sat across the front in elegant handwriting. For a second, my chest tightened with hope. Maybe Dad had left something before he went away. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe tonight wasn't strange after all. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single folded card with an address written on it and 6 words underneath. Be ready. They're here for you. I frowned and looked up. What is this? Vanessa stood there calmly. Smiling. Then she said 4 words I still hear in my nightmares sometimes. You're going with them tonight. I laughed a little because I thought she was joking. Then I noticed Olivia staring down at the floor. I noticed Vanessa wasn't laughing. And through the large front windows beside the staircase, I saw a black SUV pull into our driveway. I stood completely still, staring through the front windows as the black SUV rolled to a stop in our driveway. Its headlights washed across the front lawn, turning everything pale for a moment before fading away. Nobody inside the house said anything. Nobody moved. The silence felt wrong. Heavy. Like everyone else had rehearsed this scene except me. I looked at Vanessa again, waiting for her to laugh and tell me this was some ridiculous surprise. Maybe a prank. Maybe some strange birthday game Olivia had planned. But Vanessa only folded her hands together and smiled calmly. Do not make this difficult, Evelyn, she said softly. I remember blinking at her because I honestly thought I had heard her wrong. Make what difficult? I asked. My voice sounded smaller than I expected. Olivia finally looked up from the floor. Her eyes met mine for less than a second before she looked away again. She looked nervous. Guilty. I had never seen Olivia look guilty before. Vanessa walked over and adjusted the sleeve of my sweater like she was fixing something on a child before school pictures. "You are 18 now," she said. "You are old enough to understand that life does not always give us choices." I stared at her hand and slowly stepped back. "Where is Dad?" I asked. "Marcus is unavailable right now." "Unavailable?" I repeated. "What does that even mean?" She sighed, like I was asking too many questions during a long day. "You ask too much, Evelyn." Outside, the driver's side door of the SUV opened. A man stepped out wearing a dark suit. He was tall and carried himself with the kind of confidence that made people move without being asked. He did not rush. He simply walked toward the house. The strange thing was that he did not look threatening. He did not look angry. He looked professional. Calm. Like someone arriving for a business meeting. My heartbeat suddenly started climbing higher in my chest. I looked back at Olivia. "Olivia," I said quietly. "What is happening?" She swallowed hard. "I am sorry," she whispered. That was it. 3 words. 3 words that somehow made everything worse. The front door opened before I could ask anything else. The man stepped inside and nodded once toward Vanessa. "Everything ready?" he asked. Vanessa smiled. "Yes. Ready." Like I was luggage waiting beside the door before a vacation. Like I was some package with an address attached to it. I felt cold all over. "No," I said immediately. "No. I am not going anywhere." Vanessa's expression barely changed. "Evelyn." "No," my hands were shaking now. "I am calling my father." I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at the screen. No signal. I frowned and looked again. Nothing. I tried anyway. 1 call. 2 calls. 3 calls. Straight to nothing. I looked up slowly. Vanessa watched me quietly. "You disconnected the wireless network," I said. She said nothing. Suddenly every strange thing from tonight came rushing back into my head. Dad disappearing. Olivia acting nervous. Vanessa calling me sweetheart. The envelope. The silence. None of this started tonight. I just had not seen it until now. Then I heard another set of footsteps enter behind the man, and when I looked toward the doorway, my stomach dropped because standing there was someone wearing a black suit who looked directly at me and said, "Miss Carter, Mr. Blackwood is waiting." I stared at the man standing in the doorway and felt the room around me become strangely distant. "Miss Carter. Mr. Blackwood is waiting." The words repeated in my head like an echo. Waiting. As if I had agreed to something. As if I had been invited somewhere instead of pushed toward it without understanding why. I looked from the man to Vanessa. Then Olivia. Then back again. Nobody corrected him. Nobody looked confused. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Fear was still there. My heart was still racing. But underneath it, something colder started forming. Questions. Too many questions. I looked directly at Vanessa. "Who is Mr. Blackwood?" I asked. Vanessa tilted her head slightly and picked an invisible piece of lint from her sleeve. "Someone important." I waited for more. Nothing came. "You're sending me somewhere with a complete stranger?" I said. "Why?" Vanessa finally looked at me. Her expression stayed calm, but there was something else behind her eyes now. Relief. I saw it for only a second, but it was there. Relief. Some situations require sacrifice, Evelyn. I felt my stomach tighten. Sacrifice? I repeated quietly. Olivia suddenly stood up from her chair. "Mom." She started. Vanessa turned her head slowly toward her. "Just one look." Olivia stopped speaking immediately and sat back down. I stared at her. She looked pale now. She kept twisting a bracelet around her wrist over and over. I had seen her do that before. She did it before final exams. Before dentist appointments. Whenever she was nervous. Olivia, I said softly. Tell me what is happening. Her eyes lifted toward mine. For a second, I thought she was finally going to say something. Finally explain everything. Instead she whispered, I cannot. 3 words again. I suddenly felt angry. Not screaming angry. Not throwing things angry. Worse. The quiet kind. The kind that starts building slowly. I looked around the room I had lived in for almost 10 years. The family pictures on the wall. The fireplace with Christmas stockings still hanging from last winter. The staircase where my father used to sit beside me when I was little and help me study for math tests. Everything looked the same. But suddenly it did not feel like home anymore. I looked toward the doorway again. Another man had entered behind the first one. He carried himself the same way. Dark suit. Calm expression. Nobody looked rushed. Nobody looked tense. They were all acting like this was normal. Like plans had simply unfolded on schedule. I realized something then. These men were not there to force me. They were there because everyone expected me to walk out willingly. That realization felt even worse somehow. The first man stepped slightly forward. Miss Carter, he said politely, your things are already packed. I froze. Packed. I slowly turned toward the staircase. Sitting beside the front door was a suitcase. My suitcase. The blue one I had taken on school trips for years. I stared at it and felt the air leave my lungs. I had not packed anything. I had not chosen anything. Someone else had done it for me. I looked back at Vanessa, and for the first time all night I stopped seeing her as family. Because family does not pack your life into a suitcase while smiling across a birthday cake. Family does not stand quietly while you look for answers. Then my eyes moved to Olivia one last time, and that was when I noticed tears sitting silently in her eyes. I kept staring at Olivia because none of it made sense. Olivia cried over terrible grades and sad movies about dogs. Olivia cried when celebrities broke up and when her favorite coffee shop closed for renovations. But Olivia never cried because of me. Not once. She spent years acting like I was furniture sitting quietly in the background of her life. So seeing tears in her eyes now felt wrong. Like noticing snow in July. Vanessa noticed it too. Olivia, she said calmly, go upstairs and finish packing. Packing. My eyes immediately moved toward Vanessa again. Packing for what? I asked. Olivia stood slowly from her chair, avoiding my eyes. She looked like she wanted to say something. I could see it. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. Vanessa crossed her arms. Go. Olivia hesitated for 2 seconds before walking toward the staircase. I watched her disappear around the corner, and for a moment I wanted to run after her. I wanted answers from somebody. Anybody. Instead I stayed exactly where I was standing. I looked toward my suitcase beside the front door. Then toward the men waiting quietly near the entrance. Then back toward Vanessa. My chest felt strangely empty now. The fear had changed into something else. I started remembering things. Small things. Tiny details I had ignored for months. Olivia suddenly switching bedrooms 2 weeks ago because she said her room had bad lighting. Vanessa taking more phone calls outside on the back patio. Whispering when she thought nobody was listening. My father acting distracted during our last dinner together. I remembered asking him if everything was okay. I remembered him forcing a smile and saying he was simply tired from work. Tired. I almost laughed thinking about it now. I had believed all of it. I remembered something else too. 3 weeks earlier I had walked into the kitchen late at night because I wanted ice cream. Vanessa and Olivia had been sitting at the table together. The second they saw me, both of them stopped talking. Olivia looked upset. Vanessa looked annoyed. I had asked if something happened. Vanessa smiled immediately and said they were discussing college applications. College applications. Olivia had already finished hers months before. I remember standing there for a second thinking something felt strange before letting it go. Another memory appeared. Then another. Tiny pieces clicking together one after another. I suddenly realized I had spent years making excuses for people who never did the same for me. I looked around the house again. Everything felt different now. Even the family pictures looked different. In one photo above the fireplace, my father stood beside Vanessa with his arm around her shoulders while Olivia and I stood in front of them. I remembered taking that picture at a lake cabin in Colorado 3 years ago. I remembered thinking we looked like a real family. Looking at it now, I noticed something I had never noticed before. Vanessa had her hand resting on Olivia's shoulder. My father's hand rested on Vanessa. Nobody was touching me. I stood there in complete silence. Then I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Olivia appeared again holding a small bag. She stopped halfway down and looked at me. Her face had gone pale. Really pale. Then she said something so quietly I almost missed it. It was supposed to be me. For a few seconds I honestly thought I had heard her wrong. My brain refused to accept the words. It was supposed to be me. Olivia stood frozen halfway down the stairs holding that small bag against her chest while tears sat in her eyes. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the men by the front door stayed perfectly still. I looked at her and felt something strange happen inside me. I had spent years believing Olivia simply did not care about me. Years thinking she enjoyed standing beside Vanessa while I sat somewhere outside the circle looking in. But the expression on her face right now was not indifference. It was guilt. Real guilt. What did you just say? I asked quietly. Olivia lowered her eyes immediately. She started twisting that bracelet around her wrist again. Faster this time. Her hands were shaking. Olivia, I said again. Look at me. Slowly, she did. Her mascara had started smudging beneath her eyes. What do you mean it was supposed to be you? Vanessa let out a slow breath through her nose. Annoyed. That was what surprised me. Not angry. Not shocked. Annoyed. Like someone interrupted an appointment that had already gone on too long. Enough, Vanessa said calmly. There is no reason to complicate this. I turned toward her so quickly I almost felt dizzy. Complicate this? I repeated. You think I am complicating this? My voice had started shaking now. Not from fear anymore. Something else. Something hotter. Explain what she meant. Vanessa crossed her arms. It changes nothing. Explain it. Olivia suddenly looked up again. Mom. Vanessa's eyes immediately moved toward her. Do not. The room went quiet again. But I noticed something now. Olivia was not looking at Vanessa anymore. She was looking at me. Directly at me. I had known Olivia for almost 10 years, and I realized I had never really looked at her before. Not really. I had looked at the version Vanessa built around her. The spoiled daughter. The favorite child. The girl who always got what she wanted. But standing there now, she looked scared. Not scared for herself. Scared for me. 3 months ago, Olivia said softly, Mom started getting calls. Vanessa's head snapped toward her. Olivia. She ignored her. I heard her arguing with Dad late one night. My heart stopped for a second. Dad. Dad? I whispered. Olivia nodded slowly. They kept talking about agreements and obligations and somebody named Blackwood. The room suddenly felt smaller. Much smaller. I was not supposed to hear it, Olivia continued. But I did. Vanessa took one step forward. That is enough. Olivia's breathing started shaking. Mom said somebody had to go. I stared at her. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding inside my ears now. Somebody had to go. The words sounded unreal. Like terrible dialogue from a television show. At first. Olivia whispered, it was me. Everything inside me suddenly became still. Completely still. I looked toward Vanessa slowly. She looked back at me without changing her expression. No guilt. No sadness. Nothing. Then she smiled very slightly and said words I think I will remember for the rest of my life. I simply made the better choice. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. I just stood there looking at Vanessa while her words settled over me piece by piece. I simply made the better choice. Better choice. She said it the same way someone talks about changing dinner reservations or picking a different paint color for the walls. Calm. Simple. Like she had switched one thing for another and moved on with her day. I stared at her face searching for something human. Regret. Shame. Anything. I found nothing. Olivia looked like she was about to cry again. The men near the door looked away slightly, suddenly interested in anything except the room around them. Even they looked uncomfortable now. I laughed a little then. Not because anything was funny. It was the kind of laugh that escapes when your brain stops understanding reality. Better choice? I repeated quietly. Vanessa tilted her head. Do not act surprised, Evelyn. I looked at her. Really looked at her. You are serious. Very. I felt my hands shaking beside me. You picked me because I was easier to lose. Vanessa did not answer right away. That was answer enough. The silence said more than words ever could. I remembered every birthday my father missed because of work. Every school event where Vanessa said she forgot to tell him the time. Every family photo where I stood slightly outside the frame. Suddenly none of it looked accidental anymore. I had spent years thinking I simply was not important enough. I never considered somebody had been quietly deciding that for me. Olivia slowly walked down the last few stairs. She looked terrified now. Evelyn, she whispered. I turned toward her. Did you know? I asked. She immediately shook her head. Not at first. Not at first. Those words hurt more than I expected. How long? I asked. Her eyes filled again. About a week. A week. 7 days. 7 days of sitting beside me at breakfast. 7 days of watching television together. 7 days of pretending everything was normal. I closed my eyes for a second. I suddenly felt exhausted. Not physically. Something deeper than that. Like somebody had quietly removed every solid thing beneath me and I was only realizing it now. Then I heard footsteps behind me. One of the men moved closer. Miss Carter, he said gently, Mr. Blackwood has been waiting for over an hour. Waiting. That word again. I turned slowly toward him. Who exactly is Mr. Blackwood? I asked. The man hesitated. Just for a second. Then he said, he is not someone who enjoys delays. That was not an answer. I noticed that immediately. Not someone who enjoys delays. Not dangerous. Not cruel. Not powerful. Just careful words placed where real answers should be. Something felt strange about that. Very strange. I looked toward the front windows. The black SUV still sat outside under the driveway lights. Quiet. Motionless. Waiting. Then something else caught my attention. There was another car parked behind it. A dark sedan I had not noticed before. Its headlights were off. The windows were tinted. I frowned slightly because I realized something suddenly. If all of this had been planned for weeks, if everyone knew where I was supposed to go, then why had another car arrived only minutes ago? I kept staring at the second car outside because something about it felt wrong. The black SUV had been sitting there the entire time, waiting quietly like part of a schedule everyone already knew. But the sedan behind it looked different. It looked unexpected. I narrowed my eyes toward the dark windows, trying to see inside, but the reflection from the porch lights made it impossible. One of the men near the door suddenly shifted his weight. Just slightly. It was small enough that most people would never notice it. But I did. He looked toward the second car. Then immediately looked away. I looked back at him. "Who is in that car?" I asked. Nobody answered. I looked at Vanessa. Nothing. Olivia looked confused now too. Then I looked at the man standing closest to me. "Who is in that car?" I repeated. His expression stayed professional, but I noticed something change in his eyes. Uncertainty. Just for a second. Before he could answer, headlights flashed once outside. One quick signal. Then off again. Every man near the door suddenly became very still. Not nervous. Alert. The kind of alert people become when plans suddenly change. I looked at them carefully. Nobody had looked that way all night. Not when I asked questions. Not when Olivia started crying. But those headlights got their attention immediately. My heartbeat started climbing again. "What is happening?" I asked. The front door suddenly opened before anyone could answer. Cold air rushed into the house, carrying the smell of rain and wet pavement. A man stepped inside wearing a charcoal gray suit and black gloves. He looked older than the others, maybe around 40. His face was calm, but unlike everyone else in the room, he looked directly at me the moment he entered. Not at Vanessa. Not at Olivia. Me. Then his eyes moved toward the suitcase near the door. He frowned. "That is her?" he asked. The room went silent. I looked toward Vanessa. Vanessa looked toward him. Nobody spoke for 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4. Then the man slowly removed his gloves and looked back at me again. "Interesting," he said quietly. Interesting. I hated that word immediately. Vanessa straightened slightly. "Is there a problem?" she asked. For the first time all night, I heard uncertainty in her voice. Small, but there. The man glanced toward her. "Mr. Blackwood requested Olivia Carter." The room froze. Completely froze. Olivia's eyes widened beside me. My own brain suddenly stopped working for a second. Requested Olivia Carter. Requested Olivia. I turned slowly toward Vanessa. Very slowly. The color had disappeared from her face. Just a little, but enough. "That." She started. "That cannot be right." The man reached inside his coat and pulled out a small black folder. He opened it calmly and looked down at the page inside. "Olivia Carter," he repeated. Age 18. Blonde hair. Gray eyes. He looked up directly at Olivia. "You." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then I looked toward Vanessa again, and for the very first time that entire night, I saw fear in her eyes. Nobody said anything. The silence felt unreal. Vanessa stood near the dining table staring at the man with the black folder like she had suddenly forgotten how to speak. Olivia looked frozen beside me. I looked between all of them and for the first time that night I felt something shift inside my chest. The fear was still there, but now confusion had pushed its way in beside it. Because suddenly none of this matched the picture Vanessa had created. None of it. The man in the gray suit closed the folder slowly. "Is there some misunderstanding?" he asked. His voice stayed calm, but there was an edge underneath it now. Not anger. Precision. The kind of voice people use when something important does not line up correctly. Vanessa forced a small laugh. I had heard that laugh before. It was the laugh she used around neighbors she disliked and relatives she wanted to impress. There has been a simple mix-up, she said. Evelyn and Olivia are the same age. Perhaps somebody made a clerical error. Clerical error. I almost laughed myself this time. She was trying to turn me into paperwork. Into a typo. Into some accidental switch on a form. The man looked at her without blinking. Then he slowly looked toward me. His eyes narrowed slightly. Name? He asked. Evelyn Carter, I answered immediately. Age? 18. He nodded once and looked toward Olivia. Name? Olivia swallowed hard. Olivia Carter. Age? 18. Another small nod. Then he looked back at the folder again. I watched his eyes move across the page. I noticed something strange then. He did not seem surprised. He did not look angry. He looked interested. Like somebody solving a puzzle. Vanessa stepped forward quickly. As I said, there was confusion. But before she could continue, another voice spoke from outside the doorway. No. Every person in the room turned at once. I felt my heart stop for half a second. Standing near the open front door was a man I had never seen before. He was tall with dark skin and a black overcoat that still carried small drops of rain across the shoulders. His expression looked calm. Too calm. He did not rush inside. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood there with one hand in his pocket like he had arrived exactly when he intended to. The room changed immediately. I felt it happen. The men by the door straightened slightly. The man holding the folder stepped aside. Even Vanessa took a step backward. Nobody introduced him. Nobody needed to. I knew immediately. Somehow I knew. His eyes moved slowly across the room before finally landing on me. He studied me for several quiet seconds. Not in a rude way. Not in a cold way. Just carefully. Then he looked toward Vanessa. You changed the arrangement, he said. Vanessa opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. He looked back at me. Interesting, he said quietly. Then he tilted his head slightly and asked, Evelyn, do you know why you are standing here tonight? I stared at him without answering because the truth was I had no idea anymore. 10 minutes earlier I thought I understood my life. I thought I understood who loved me, who did not, and where I belonged. Now I was standing in my own house feeling like a stranger while everybody else seemed to know secrets I had never even imagined. The man everyone called Mr. Blackwood kept looking at me calmly. He did not seem impatient. He did not seem angry. He simply waited. I looked toward Vanessa. She looked terrified now. Actually terrified. I had never seen that before. Vanessa always controlled every room she walked into. Always. Parents at school events loved her. Neighbors loved her. People at church loved her. She knew exactly what to say and exactly how to smile. But that smile was gone now. Olivia had moved closer to me without me even noticing. I realized her shoulder was almost touching mine. Strange. We had lived under the same roof for years and suddenly tonight was the first time she had ever stood beside me instead of somewhere across the room. I looked back at Mr. Blackwood. No, I said finally. I do not know why I am standing here. He nodded once. No surprise. No reaction. Then he slowly looked toward Vanessa again. Interesting, he said quietly. Because your stepmother seems to think she knows. Vanessa swallowed. I actually saw it happen. Mr. Blackwood, please, she said quickly. There has simply been confusion. He looked at her for a long moment. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small one. Somehow that felt stranger than if he had looked angry. Confusion, he repeated. No. He glanced toward the black folder still sitting in the other man's hand. The arrangement was clear. Vanessa looked like all the air had disappeared from the room. Olivia grabbed my arm suddenly. Her fingers felt cold. Evelyn, she whispered. I looked at her. I am sorry. She started crying quietly now. Real crying. Not dramatic crying. Small tears slipping down her face while she looked at the floor. I stared at her and suddenly felt tired again. So tired. Because I realized something. Olivia had known for 1 week and hated herself for it. I had known for 1 hour and already felt like I could barely breathe. Then Mr. Blackwood did something nobody expected. He walked directly past all of us toward the family photographs above the fireplace. He stood there looking at them quietly. Seconds passed. Nobody spoke. Then he pointed at one picture. The one from the cabin in Colorado. The same one I had stared at earlier. That one, he said. Everybody looked at it. Who took the picture? I frowned slightly. Of all the questions in the world, why that one? I looked up at it. Then I remembered. My eyes widened a little. My father, I said quietly. Mr. Blackwood slowly turned toward me. Exactly. My heartbeat stopped. Completely stopped. Because for the first time all night I realized something that had never crossed my mind before. My father was behind the camera. Which meant he had never been in the picture at all.